for the news and views you can't hear anywhere else.
You guys are talking about everything that I just wanted to ask about.
This is Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
And I'm joined by Luke, founder of Voiceofreasons, which discusses theology, philosophy, conspiracy, has 237,000 plus followers on TikTok. The TikTok is Voice of Reasons Official 2, the number 2, with more than 30 million views. Luke is dedicated to exploring the nature of reality via science, history, theology, philosophy, and conspiracy. His first documentary, The Operating System, released in 2019, posits the theory that we are in a computer simulated reality, and the software coding that makes up this reality is the Torah or Pentateuch. You can find him at his linktree/Voice of Reasons. So welcome to TNT Radio, Luke.
Wow, that was a great intro. I appreciate that, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. You are friendly with Terry Wolf, my weekly regular guest of wolfpox.com, author of Fire and the Rabbit Hole, and also a TikToker. I got to get into the TikTok business. And maybe if you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Voice of Reasons.
Yeah, so Terry and I are part of what I call the TikTok Christian Content Creator Super Friends League. There's a handful of us that are in the information war on that app. And, you said you want to get into it. Obviously, we know there's some issues with TikTok, but it also has unbelievable reach. You have to kind of make goldfish content. You have to make 1-minute pieces, which is very difficult when you're discussing the nature of reality. But there's a few of us that have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of views. And we met, he's been on my show, I've been on his, and it's, when I started this, I came out to start a YouTube channel. My dream was like a conspiracy YouTube channel. You mentioned Alex Jones. I was into conspiracy. I watched the buildings come down on 9/11 and knew it was off. Back in that time, you could watch, Freedom to Fascism, the Aaron Russo film. You could watch Loose Change before, YouTube kind of shut those down. So passionate about this information. As a Christian, you're constantly seeing potentially the end times scenario, this one world elite secular system. So I came out to start a YouTube channel at a funny time in 2020 and severely underestimated cancel culture. And so that went immediate strike on YouTube. So I went over to TikTok to be safe, to kind of get away from the overlords at Google, YouTube. And the first account did really well. That's why Voice of Reasons Official 2. We had 55,000 followers. We were doing 9/11 videos, Kennedy videos, and then they flushed the account down the cancel culture toilet, and we had to kind of recalibrate. So we went from really trying. I have a look at this that's not kind of a predictable, sensational conspiracy. I think of myself as logical, skeptical. So I kind of analytically break these things down. But I found out very quickly that it was a very taboo thing to talk about. So what we've done is we've switched from kind of historical conspiracy and political and kind of seeing what's going on in the world right now into what I would call the bigger conspiracy, which is trying to expose what I call the priests of the religion of science, which is the C.S. Lewis predicted scientific technocracy that we're in. And so that's the focus of the new account. It's done really well. We do live debates. I debate with atheists, geneticists, particle physicists, biologists. We do a live show where it's like a 2 and 3 hour debate. It's really cool. A lot of people tune in. A lot of people watch. A lot of trolls. A lot of people mad. But it's like hand-to-hand information war combat, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm just curious about this censorship landmine that we're all wading through, and I see people on different platforms, on YouTube, on Twitter, on, as you say, TikTok. They'll get deplatformed and then they'll create a second account, and some people will immediately get that second account nailed, and others, like yourself, continue on. I just kind of find that strange. I would think that the totalitarian censors would be like, oh, this guy's back again, nail it, get rid of him the second
Right.
or the third time. What makes you think then that they probably do? They think, they know that it's you and you're back again, and they just kind of like, maybe because, as you said, you switched your focus, or
the only reason we're still in business is because I entirely went away from anything really controversial. So they do, when I lost that first account, they wiped out my first account, my backup account, my wife's account. She had never done anything. She was a homestead channel. They wiped out her account. My phone was, and no matter what I tried to do, they weren't letting me, and I had to get a whole new phone. So it wasn't easy, but my guess is that it wasn't biometrically set up. I mean, it's a big app, a lot of people on it. A lot of it is AI algorithm based. So if you really stay away from the trigger words, that helps. But really, I mean, this first account, I called it the lead balloon. I had 8 community guideline violations in the first month. So it was really doomed. And that's when I switched gears. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure they have a dossier on me. I code a lot of the information. There's a lot of Easter eggs in my content. They're 1-minute pieces, but if you go and check it out, the song matters. The clips matter. I'll have articles. And if you look closer at the article that's behind me on the green screen, it really talks about the agenda. So I'm trying to what was that War Games movie back in the 80s? Do you want to play a game? I'm kind of playing with them a little bit. And I stopped pushing, in particular, the COVID stuff and anything political. And really, if God isn't real, and this is kind of the atheist narrative, I'm talking about a sky daddy in a fairy tale book. So what are they going to ban me about, right?
Yeah, and I learned late as well with YouTube. I was up to 2 strikes, and I haven't been wiped yet, but almost. And it was when my guests, I interviewed Alex Craner, who's frequently on TNT Radio, fellow Croat, and he said, because I think YouTube auto transcribes the audio into text, and as you said, the algorithm will see. I think they have sets of words that are no-goes, like bam, immediately strike. And then Bob Moriarty, the Vietnam vet, he questioned Doug Casey, the international man. He said, bam, second strike. And it's but here on TNT, we can say, I think we'll be okay. And we got to jump to a quick news break. We'll be right back.
This is James O'Neill with a check of today's headlines. Twitter executives may have lied to the court about fake accounts on the platform, according to screenshots posted online by Elon Musk just days after taking over the company. Wildfires in Hunan, a province in south-central China, erupted on October 17th, but the Chinese media has kept silent on the natural disaster. Nancy Pelosi says her husband Paul, who was attacked by a man with a hammer at their home, is making steady progress after skull surgery.
Do you have an upcoming community event, rally, march, festival, or fundraiser that could do with some free publicity? TNT Radio wants to promote it for you. Simply visit the What's On Events calendar on the TNT Radio website and submit your event details, and we'll get the word out, helping you make a difference on TNT Radio.
So you mentioned C.S. Lewis, who is great. I love his work. I still need to catch up and read more from C.S. Lewis. Of course, we've got Aldous Huxley, who talked about the final revolution. And this has been my obsession the last 2+ years, because I feel like this is everything else with background noise. Yesterday I spoke with Dr. Aaron Kheriaty. His new book was published today, The New Abnormal, The Biomedical Security State. And this is what he talks about. And I've been talking about since 2020, the algorithm ghetto, the technocracy, the social credit system, this global dystopia. And it's crazy. You said priests. I think you called them priests. I saw one of your videos. You talked about. You referred to what we're going into as a secular maniac doom that we're headed into. So
you saw that video, yeah.
Yeah, please tell us. What's going on? Where are we going?
Oh man, this is exciting. I was going to. You said right at the end of that I would be able to speak freely, and I was just going to see if I can do this therapeutically. So on this program, I can say that the are safe. Am I still on the air?
Oh, yeah, you can say. I mean, if we don't like people cursing, but other than that, we've had guests that had all kinds of interesting theories, so to speak. So go ahead.
It would take me a little while to get used to that. So a real quick clarification: people get cursing and cussing confused. God says not to curse, and cursing is like Elijah cursed the children to have the bears eat them because they said he was a bald head. We don't want to curse people because the universe is basically like Alexa and it's listening. So we could wish ill and have effect on people. to say a cuss word, like especially the S word, I don't think it's as big a deal. So people, it's a semantic, but yeah, don't curse, but I don't think cussing is as big a deal. Okay, so the scientific thing, this I call them the priests of the religion of science. And if you study historically how this works, the king and the queen have always needed an intermediary to basically communicate to the pawns. I'll try and do this very quickly, but this elite system that we're in is a chessboard. You've got the king and the queen. Next to the king and the queen are the bishops, then the knights, then the rooks, then the pawns, kind of moving out and then around. Well, we're the pawns. We can only move forward. We can't move backwards. We're set up left, right, white, black. We go off to the war to kill each other when we're all just working people trying to make a buck and have some general freedoms. They want us dying, killing each other. They make money off it, obviously, financing the war, all of these different kind of things. But how do they get the pawns to go into war? They get them to go into the war because the king and the queen invoke a priest or a magi. It could be the priests of Egypt. It could be the Babylonian magi and astronomers, or could be Fauci or Dawkins or Krauss or any of these people today. And what these people do is they interpret to the pawn the information that no one can ever prove or disprove that validates the position of the king and the queen unquestionably. So whether it's the stars or God or whatever, these priests are fundamental and they sit next to the king and the queen. And then that information goes next to the knight. Well, the knight is information. Okay, that's the CIA, KGB, Mossad. But information is a two-way street. So the information is going like CIA going and getting the information. That's also promoting the information, the media. So the knights are actually the media and intelligence. It's just the control of information. But that's coming through the priests from the king and the queen. Then the rook is the military-industrial complex, the authority, the police, the enforcement arm, and then us in the front lines. So the first contact point or touch point for the control of the king and the queen is controlling the information about the reality that we are in. And this is what C.S. Lewis knew. C.S. Lewis is my hero. He knew this in 1945. This is 90 years ago. I read up the synopsis. If you haven't read his book, That Hideous Strength, just really quickly, it says, what is the theme of that hideous strength? See if this sounds familiar to you. That hideous strength, beginning to end, is about the total reconstruction of a person's understanding of the world. It charts its characters in light of the events of the first, whatever. So basically reconstructing the events, how somebody perceives the world. Then the story involves an attempt by an evil organization, the NICE, it's an acronym for National Institute of Coordinated Experiments, to gain control of the media and of government and social structure in England as a step towards spreading totalitarian power across the earth. They need NICE. They need the priests of science. And this is what C.S. Lewis knew was coming. And it's not because it's actually new. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. This is what they've always done. This is what the elites have always done. This is what, people don't understand that this is an agenda being ran by something outside of space-time, this enemy of God, this, satanic system, whatever. They're going to do the same thing over and over. The devil isn't creative. He can do the same thing and make it work. He could just do it every 100 years. Everybody dies, does it again. Doesn't matter if it's the Reichstag. It doesn't matter if it's a Spanish flu. It doesn't matter if it's this. So C.S. Lewis knew that the science, we were going to go from religious control to scientific religious control. And he was dead on about it. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think Lewis also wrote The Abolition of Man, and I have to read that. I think I've only read snippets. And as you said, I think they've been doing this all throughout history. And I've had some guests on who've agreed. I think the thing that's changed now, though, and you mentioned this religion of science, scientism. I had a guest on the other day. I'm already forgetting. There were other terms that were used. I mean, we've got transhumanism, scientism, and technology seems to be key. Like if you think, all the empires in the past, Babylon, Rome, Alexander the Great, they could never conquer the 100% of the planet. Because they could never muster that many men, cross the oceans, and technology from the 20th century now that's the game changer that allows this regime to 100% take planetary control of literally everything, using satellites, technology, internet. With the pandemic, they took control of all nations on the planet and locked every nation down pretty much. And so What do you think is their end goal, end game? What are they, working at?
Okay, this is so big. I love this question. We talked a little bit earlier today, and I knew we'd be able to get to the real, because so much time you spend dancing around stuff you want to say, but to actually be able to talk about what's going on is super important. So what is their end game? We know that it's a anti-God secular order. We know that because Nimrod, and I'll actually read from Josephus if you're interested in such a thing in a minute about what Nimrod was trying to do by creating an anti-God technocracy, basically. But here's what's interesting. One of my individuals, my science advisor, I call him in our Discord group, pointed out that before the flood, like, people don't believe the flood happened. Like, oh, you believe in the flood? There's a good chance it happened. Maybe we talk about that on another show or whatever. But before the flood, if you believe the geology, and the Bible's just, there's so much information in there about our past and where and how we got here. This is like not a surprise that this is happening if you've read the Bible. What happened is the geology of the world was one continent. It wasn't 7 continents split apart, separated by seas. Everybody spoke one language. So we went from, utopia in the garden to a total tyranny, basically one world global secular order very quickly, because they were very intelligent. They were on one continent and they spoke one language, right? So the flood judged the world, and God, in his supernatural provision, broke up the continents to separate us, like a parent would his kids. Like, you go over there, you go over there. You guys are just fighting. Separated the continents, literally creating a location issue, proximity issue. We can't do this anymore because I'm over here, you're over there. And then after Babylon, which when the tower was being built, God saw the exact same thing happening in this spirit of Nimrod. It was rebuilding this one world system again. And so what did God do? He confounded the languages. So now you had a logistical issue for this one world system, which was people were separated around the world and spoke different languages until about, 40 years ago, the internet. And now digitally, we've rebuilt the World Wide Web is the rebuilding of this pre-flood Babylonian Nimrod system. And now there is no barriers. There is no language issues. And what do we see happening at breakneck speed? I had a video that I made postulating, it's one of them that has gone very viral. And I basically say is the solar system wasn't modeled by the menorah, the Jewish, it's actually the Hanukkah, but you've got the 4 planets on either side of the servant lamp, the Shamesh, which is actually translated as the sun. So anyways, it did really well. A lot of Jewish people, Israelis, actually commented on it. And I can go to the video and they write it in Hebrew. I can't speak Hebrew, and translate it to English. And every time I do it, I'm like, it feels weird. It's like the inverse Tower of Babel situation. So in my opinion, they're literally hell bent on building the pre-flood world, the one that got us in trouble and caused the judgment of God. And, if you've read the book, it ends with the judgment of God again, because it gets to a point, just like it did before the flood, where God can't tolerate it. And not just because of sin, right? People think it's like, oh, people sin. No, it's because the genetics are being compromised. You mentioned, AI and transhumanism a little bit earlier. They're rewriting the genetics. This is exactly what happened before the flood. They're repurposing. I mean, I'm ranting, but the human genome is information. Okay. And if it becomes contaminated, it's irreversible. And so whether it's this vaccine or whether it's transhumanism or whatever, if we end up with a compromised genome, God can't just forgive us and move on. It's ruined. It's sullied. The whole thing is sullied. And so they're moving towards this very anti-God global system. And it's no surprise that they're ostracizing Christians and they're getting rid of Jesus. And, you can go on and on. But to me, that's the agenda.
So I'm having my mind blown. It's like, a lot of this stuff, I already know, but this is the thing. I like to have people on from all walks of life. I have people from left, right, libertarian, outer space, inner space, other independent. And each person offers, it's like a mirror that's shattered. And a lot of us get the main idea, but then each person has these like new angles or fresh insights that I never would have thought of. And it was kind of obvious, but you pointed that out. I never thought about that. Like, I know about Nimrod, and they wanted to build basically, they built their one world government. Yeah, they had their one world government back then. But as you said, yeah, it was one continent. Everyone was congregated the whole planet on one space, probably somewhere near the Middle East. And they had their one world government. And then, as you said, we were broken apart. And I mean, you laid it out perfectly. Now we're back together with this digital virtual sphere that's allowing them to do the same thing. And taking us to that one world government. We got to jump to a break again. Luke's website is, you could just use the Linktree, Voice of Reasons, or on TikTok, Voice of Reasons Official, and the number 2. We'll be right back on TNT Radio.
Give me a minute with TNT Radio's Steve Malzberg.
A funny thing happened to Palestinian journalist Satha Hamad on her way to receiving the Kurt Schork Prize for International Journalism from the Thomas Reuters Foundation. She had the honor yanked from her. But why would Reuters do that to this outstanding journalist after tweeting that she's shown resilience in her reporting on the West Bank, giving a voice to the Palestinian people? I mean, isn't that the ultimate for any Mideast journalist? Well, how does this sound? Me and Hitler are one, friends, and sleep together. But we have the same mentality. For example, the extermination of the Jews. That was from her social media posting in November of 2014. That post was found by media watchdog Honest Reporting. And that's not all they found. They claim there are many more anti-Semitic and violent posts. Hamad has denied that some of the posts are hers. In withdrawing the award, Reuters called it a difficult decision. Really? Did she actually have to murder Jews for it to be a no-brainer decision? Shame on Reuters. I guess they're just showing who they really are. Thanks for giving me a minute. I'm Steve Malzberg for TNT Radio.
The bushfire was so unpredictable, it was important to have a plan.
We stayed up to date with our phones and the radio. We knew it was coming.
I never thought it would actually happen. I'm glad we had a plan. You have to prepare your property and your family.
And there was nothing we can do in the meantime.
Always had a plan.
We can all be bushfire ready. Do your 5-minute bushfire plan today.
A cashless society means zero cash. No tipping the waiter or hairdresser. No giving to busking musicians. No selling unwanted items for cash. No buying anything with privacy. Digital currency means every cent you receive will be recorded and every transaction tracked. Lighting the fuse for freedom. TNT Radio.
We're back with Luke of Voice of Reasons. I always get confused. Voices of Reason, Voice of Reasons on TikTok. 230,000 plus followers, 237,000, more than 30 million views. Voice of Reasons Official, number 2, Linktree / Voice of Reasons. And I like to speculate. I don't hold fast to years or that sort of thing, but I like to, if you see it's getting cloudy, it's going to rain soon, usually. Any thoughts on the time or the timeline? I see the elites themselves obsessing over 2030. So I feel like something big is coming in, one scenario in the 2030s. But I recall reading about Isaac Newton. Most people don't know, the gravity guy. He spent more time writing about Bible and prophecy than he did about science. And apparently he calculated that, according to his mathematical calculation, the latest that the end could come, the end of history and the return of Christ, was like 2060 or 2068. So even that, even by Newton's calculations, we're like some 40 years away at the latest. But any thoughts on timelines, whether it's from the elites or anything else?
They've got so many things, even related to the last part that we were going on about. But really quickly about the timing. My first end time scare was 93. We had come across I think the Hal Lindsey book, Late Great Planet Earth, and somehow we had deduced, I was very young at the time, but that Jesus was coming in 2000, and at the time it was like there's a pre-trib rapture, and so we thought 93 was gonna, we were all going to be swooped away, whatever. That didn't happen. So I'm way past like looking for dates particularly. I think that my sense is that we're most likely going to be here for a good chunk of it, if not all of it. But I would say interesting thing on the timing. You said the elites they seem hell bent on trying to get this thing through, and I think that the way it follows is like this: they don't know, they're not omniscient. Jesus, who you can trust, said, "Nobody knows the time or the hour, only the Father." So the devil doesn't know when the end is. So he has to always have his actors, makeup up behind a curtain, ready to go if it is that time. So this is where people get stuck on trying to find the Antichrist or the this and then that. And it turns out not being them, because quantum physically, it's just the potential that it's these different characters, false prophet, certain empires, kingdoms, whatever. You mentioned earlier the technology has to get better. The devil does this proof of concept thing, and then he knows that as the instrumentation gets better, the control will be better. So you were right about that, I believe. But it looks like they're making a strong push for now. It looks like the COVID pandemic was either a dry run or infrastructurally setting up this, the end of the currency. And obviously we went from COVID to this war and the hyperinflation. None of this is a surprise. But an interesting kind of looking at some more of the esoteric information scripturally about what the Bible would say about it. So there's this idea that God made the earth in 6 days, and a day unto God is 1,000 years. So you've got 6,000 potential years of humankind. So you had 4,000 years before Jesus and 2,000 years after Jesus. So it would stand to reason that he would come in this 2,000 years. Well, when we were looking for the 93 date, we were basing it on his birth, which he was, born at 0-ish. Probably he might have actually been born at 3 BC. September 11th might actually be his actual birthday, which is a fascinating thing to get into. But if he was born in 3 BC and he lived 33 years, you end up with 2030 as, when this end of this covenant would have happened. So if they're pushing for 2030, it could be that, because that's going to be 2,000 years literally from when Jesus died. People were looking for when he was born, but it wasn't when he was born that the covenant was enacted. It wasn't enacted until his blood was shed. So it would be his death date. And then there's even some people think it's a 30 years that Jesus lived on the earth, but he could have been born at 0. So either way, you end up with this 2030 number. 2027 to 2030, I think is going to be really interesting. So like you said, it could be cloudy. I don't think it's about, worrying about that it's going to come. There's no action items. Jesus doesn't say buy gold, buy guns, whatever, but to be looking for the seasons. And it looks like the devil's at least pushing for it. And we'll see what God's plan is.
So we didn't talk about that before we connected, but that's crazy because I independently, not talking to anyone or even reading anyone posit that theory, I just came to that same conclusion myself. Again, it's one scenario. I entertained many different scenarios. I've had the same thing since COVID happened. What you just laid out, I've had that potential scenario in my mind. So, that's crazy. And before I continue, what are some other important things or issues that are going on?
Okay, so a couple things. I didn't expect to come on and be quite as preachy. For people who don't know me, I consider myself a-religious. What I mean by that is I think that religion can be part of the control system. So when I talk about Jesus, I'm talking about a real relationship with the living God through his word. I'm not talking about going to church on Sunday. Pastors were telling their sheep to get vaccinated. They send their kids to public education, yada, yada. Like, go to God with that. I'm not like a churchianity kind of Christian. So I just wanted to clarify that. A couple things that are on my mind. We were talking about the World Wide Web bringing us back together. And I know this is old conspiracy news, but with this idea that the web brought us all back together, you're familiar with the VOV in Hebrew and its numerical assignment, correct?
No.
So in Hebrew, they don't have W and V. Well, it gets really interesting if you look at the etymology or like the how we get these letters. But so U and W. So W is actually is 2 U's. So we have basically V and double V. It's the same thing, but in Hebrew, they don't have both. It's a very efficient 22-letter language. So they don't have V and double V. They only have V. V is the number 6. So Hitler picked VW as his logo, and I had this on one of my early. Actually, no, TikTok banned that video. Sorry, but I had it as the Volkswagen logo as VW, which is actually VVV. So it's 666. Huge surprise. The World Wide Web, www, is in Hebrew would be 666. So that's interesting with the Yuval Noah Harari thing. Something though I think you'll find really interesting. You mentioned Huxley. Okay, so we all know Huxley, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. And this is something I really am hoping we talk about on a future episode. Have you ever heard of the name Thomas Henry Huxley?
Yeah, well, that was, didn't they call him Darwin's bulldog?
Yes.
I think.
Yes, very good. He's the grandfather of Aldous Huxley.
Yeah, they were related, yeah.
Grandfather. So what I would stress people to understand is that, we understand that we were had by the scientific community over the last few years. This trust the science thing isn't science. You're supposed to be a rigorous skeptic. Depending on where you're at in your worldview, I want you to understand that the theory of evolution and the Big Bang and this meaningless universe, you're in an infinite meaningless universe. It's an accident. It created itself through an explosion and you're just an animal, was brought to you by the same folk who brought you the COVID vaccine. Obviously, many years before. Thomas Henry Huxley was Darwin's bulldog. He was the orator who took the theory from kind of a madman's ramblings in a diary to something that 85% of the Western world takes as gospel truth. It was pushed by an elite narrative. O.C. Marsh, the guy who came up with the horse leg fossil we've all seen, he was financed by his uncle, J.P. Morgan. This whole thing was done through manipulation, misinformation, pseudoscience to push a narrative to make you believe that you are an animal in a meaningless universe. And you're not. This universe is designed, likely, at least in my deduction, by the God of the Bible. We have infinite potential. The people that run this show wouldn't be able to pull this off if they didn't convince you first that God was dead, okay, which is what you've all Noah Harari's been teaching and preaching and whatever. We've been lied to about it. In the movie The Matrix, Neo becomes aware of his surroundings and ends up destroying the Matrix from the inside. So in a thought experiment where Neo goes to school, he goes to little Neo virtual digital school, what do you think the teachers at the school would have taught Neo? Think they would have told him that you can control this computer with your mind and you could stop the elites from the inside? Or do you think you would have told him that you're an animal in a meaningless universe? If you distrust science, you need to take that all away, in my opinion, and think about what else they taught you. They told you there is no flood. There is no God. You can't trust the Bible. They used to say Jesus wasn't a real historical figure. He is, by many, many accounts. The same scientific control of information group that pushed the vaccine also told you that you can't trust the Bible and God isn't real, and they've proven that he doesn't exist.
Yeah, and so some people will call this a religious conversation, which we shouldn't be having. I don't view it as that. When we talk about at school, I taught. I was ordered to teach a class called Environment and International Relations, and of course, I don't believe in the theory. It's a theory of man-made global warming, but right. I would do what I think is supposed to be done, which is not done anymore. I was like the only one doing this in all of my classes. Whether it was 9/11, they gave me a course to teach on 9/11, basically, and the Madrid and London terrorist attacks at University of Mexico. And I would do one day or one session, we'd look at the official narrative, and then the next session, we'd look at all the stuff that people who listen to TNT know about 9/11 being an inside
they loved you.
Job and false flag operation. Yeah, and I did the same thing with climate, and I think the same thing would have to be with teaching evolution alongside creation. Although to my and then you have both perspectives, and not just you can't talk about creationism in school or whatnot. And so,
sorry to interrupt. I actually don't think we should teach creationism in school. And I think the theory of evolution is a fine theory to teach. My issue is teaching it as fact. That's my issue. We don't know. Here's what we know. 3,100 years ago, civilization began in, of all places, the Fertile Crescent. We know that. Before that, it's guesswork, looking at rocks, looking at the universe, looking through glass, trying to figure out none of these things are dated. You can believe in the theory of evolution. I'm just trying to stress the idea that it being taught as fact was brought by, I guess it's like this. I'm talking to a conspiracy-minded, critical thinking group of people. I know a lot of people are going to be upset by me saying this, but I just want you to understand how ridiculous this sounds. Okay, they were lying to us about the vaccine. They were lying to us about COVID. I didn't trust Fauci, but I trust Dawkins. I trust be consistent, question the whole thing. And that's what I encourage people to do. I put in my bio there, everything you were taught is a lie. And the thing is, in order for them to conquer this world, they have to make you believe that you're insignificant. That you mentioned climate change. God says he created the earth for us and we have dominion over it. Climate change teaches what the earth created us and we're killing it. We are a problem. We need to sacrifice people to the earth? What does that sound like? This is all a spiritual situation. And let me be very clear. There's a huge difference between religion and spirituality. That's why I said I'm not religious. Having a relationship with the living God and this repurposed Christianity thing that we've seen, two different things. So I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about being intellectually honest about people that have seen that they're lying to us, how far does it go? How deep does the lie of the rabbit hole go?
But I think we should have a balance, though, no? Because like in anything, I don't believe in communism, state monopoly, or I don't believe in monopoly capitalism, which would be private, a monopoly held by this private oligarchy. And I guess my point is today we're seeing people throwing the baby out with the bathwater, flat earth stuff, and then people who say contagious and infectious disease doesn't exist at all. And on it goes. I guess we'll have to have you on. 1 minute left, 1 minute to midnight. We'll talk again in the future. But real quick, tell us where are the best places we can find you, support you, and that sort of thing.
I appreciate that, brother. So the website is voiceofreasonsofficial.com. You have to type it in. Google doesn't let you just find me real easily. We're working on a revamp on that. Again, TikTok, Voice of Reasons Official 2. If you're not on TikTok, I don't suggest you get on there. It's obviously a pretty incriminating app, but I do a live show Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays, and put a lot of content up there as well. We have a Discord. All that stuff's in our link tree, so you can find us through the website or through my link tree on the TikTok app.
All right. Fascinating conversation, Luke. I'm still stuck on the whole Nimrod thing.
I wish we could have got into the Josephus thing. We'll do that next time.
Yeah, we'll talk again. I'll look into your stuff. And thanks for coming on. And that's it for me. But everyone else, keep on rocking in the not-so-free world.